Dana White has come in for plenty of criticism during his time as UFC boss. One of the biggest problems with White's reign is the perceived lack of money he pays his fighters. So when a prominent Russian MMA personality bags a nice shiny UFC deal, what's the big deal? Well, he's not a fighter for starters. Today, we're discussing Hasbulla's newly penned UFC deal, plus all the fallout. Stay with us. Let's get straight into it then. What's going down? Well, fans and MMA fighters aren't happy, that's for sure. Since bursting onto the MMA scene a couple of years back, many people have christened the TikTok star Mini Khabib due to his close personal relationship with the former lightweight king. Hasbulla Magomedov hails from the same region of Russia, Dagestan, as Khabib, and, if his Instagram stories are to be believed, the young influencer has just penned a 5-year promotional deal with the top MMA promotion. He posted a picture alongside Dana White with the caption, "5 years contract with UFC, thank you Dana," before tagging the UFC boss. Of course, due to his disability, Hasbulla won't be competing in the octagon. He suffers from a rare genetic condition known as growth hormone deficiency, GHD. However, it's thought that the contract is pretty lucrative, with some people claiming Hasbulla is being paid more than some UFC fighters, which if true, is pretty unbelievable. White and Magomedov share a positive relationship, and the boss is known to be a fan of the Russian, recently saying, "So, I'm going to tell you something." So the video that he sent saying, "Dana White, I'm coming to Abu Dhabi and UFC." So when I posted that with me on the plane saying, "I'm coming," it's the biggest post that I've ever posted. White continued by saying, "I have 6.7 million followers on Instagram. 6.4 million people watch that video. Is that effing crazy? What do you make of Hasbulla's announcement?" So, what has been the reaction to Hasbulla's UFC deal? Stay tuned to find out. Many people have suggested that the amount of money Hasbulla is being paid after inking his new UFC deal might actually eclipse some of UFC fighters, and that's easy to believe given the reports that White still hands out horrible 12-12 contracts to up-and-coming fighters. If a guy on a contract like this only fights once in a year and loses, then he would only make $12,000. It's more than likely Hasbulla's deal is worth more than $12,000. Fans have gone in on White for signing the young TikTok star, with one quite rightly pointing out that the UFC would rather pay Hasbulla to promote the company than pay for a dressing room for Johnny Walker, who was recently kicked out of the arena after UFC 279 in Vegas. Other fans simply suggested that Hasbulla and the UFC were simply trolling after the news dropped, but sadly, this is the world we currently live in. One fan hilariously claimed that Hasbulla had been signed up to go against Conor McGregor in a fight he might actually finally have a chance at winning after his recent years of turning out as a punch bag for people like Khabib and Dustin. More on Conor in a sec. Of course, most of the reaction to the deal was negative, but any deal these days where the UFC are seen to be spending money will always draw criticism due to the often pathetic contracts they hand out to their fighters. So, what's all this Conor business about? Let's see. McGregor and Hasbulla went at it online earlier this month as the Irishman posted a series of offensive tweets aimed at the diminutive Russian. One of the notorious posts referred to Hasbulla as a smelly little inbred before the Irish legend suggested he'd like to kick Magomedov over a goalpost akin to an American football field goal. However, Khabib's miniature mate wasn't about to take that lying down and quickly fired back at Conor saying, "At least one of us maintained an undefeated record." Pretty brutal. McGregor then referred to his nation's sport of GAA, Gaelic football, telling Hasbulla he's going to make it his mission to score a three-pointer with him one day. He also questioned his followers as to how much it would be worth to get him on the volley. Hilariously, Hasbulla then called Conor out for a fight in the octagon before bringing up his 2018 defeat to his fellow Russian Khabib Nurmagomedov. Hasbulla wittily said, "I have my UFC contract now. If the notorious MMA is really a man, see me in Abu Dhabi. You got smashed by Team Khabib already. Guess his money from Mayweather ran out and he needs more attention. Hit him where it hurts, right?" Somewhat surprisingly, current featherweight king Alexander Volkanovski then jumped in to defend Hasbulla, telling McGregor to leave him alone. Shortly after the exchange, the Irish fighter deleted his tweets, suggesting he might not have been fully compos mentis. What did you guys make of the funny exchange? Next up, Hasbulla and Shaq have gotten into it. Yes, you heard us. Of course, the pair didn't actually throw down, but as they appeared on a yacht in Australia together recently, Hasbulla got a cheeky dig in on the 7'1" NBA legend. Shaq was distracted with one of his devices, but that didn't stop Hasbulla showing him who was boss. The miniature Russian tapped him on the shoulder, and as soon as the former Laker turned around, he punched him square in the face. Of course, given his size, the punch wouldn't have hurt Shaq, who initially looked pretty shocked that Magomedov would have laid hands on him. O'Neal was one of the biggest and most feared men on the basketball court in his day, but Hasbulla appeared to have literally no fear of the gigantic American, and when the mini punch landed, Shaq quickly played along and took a bit of a dive, going down against the metaphorical ropes. But of course, the pair were only playing. The two were in Australia taking part in some sort of event or other, but it is known that O'Neill was also meeting with Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese to promote the rights of Indigenous people, which is a pretty cool thing to be involved in, to be fair. What did you guys make of Hasbullah's cheeky sucker punch on Shaq? I mean, the nerve on this guy. Some more Dana White news now, starting with Joe Rogan. Rogan is one of the most beloved MMA and even sports commentators in the business, given the depth of knowledge he brings to the game. But he's recently suggested that his continued alliance with the UFC is completely dependent on Dana White being in the job. The host of the most popular podcast on the planet, The Joe Rogan Experience, has been with the UFC since as far back as 1997, when he first bagged the role of backstage interviewer. Dana and the Fertitta brothers realized how much knowledge he had about the sport and decided his skills would be better suited to the booth, and a career in calling fights was born. He only works the big numbered events on home soil these days, but he recently suggested that if Dana ever leaves the UFC, then that would also signal the end of his time with the company. He also revealed that that eventuality is even in his contract, which is pretty wild. Of course, Rogan has other things going on, with his hugely successful podcast, as well as the numerous other ventures he's involved with, so he doesn't necessarily need the UFC. However, should Rogan leave, then the company would lose a wealth of knowledge in the booth, and the big events would surely never be the same again without his voice. What do you make of Rogan's words? And finally, Dana has awarded a new UFC contract to a child. No, we're not talking about Hasbulla. He's legally an adult, even if he looks young due to his genetic disability. We're talking about a guy who's sure to make waves in the UFC in coming years, as Raul Rosas Jr. has been signed up to the promotion after the young bantamweight dominated his most recent opponent in Dana White's Contender Series. Rosas was able to extend his professional record to 6-0 to score a big decision win after being given every round by every judge. After awarding Rosas the contract, White was quoted as saying, "He is absolutely positively talented. He's special, he's different. At 17 years old, you just don't see kids handling themselves like that." Of course, it would be silly to hype the kid up too much, as we've seen this sort of thing before. I mean, Sage Northcutt anyone? However, Rosas looked the real deal during his bout, not only showing his skills on the attack, but also proving he was able to defend submissions too after shutting down a late guillotine attempt from his opponent. Did you guys watch Rosas' performance? Give us your thoughts on how far you think he can go in the UFC below. As usual, thanks for dropping in on us today, and remember to swing by again next time when we'll be discussing all sorts of other cool bits and pieces. And why not do us a solid by liking and sharing today's video, while also subscribing to our channel so you don't miss out on more great content in the future. Bye guys.